Okay, guys, glad you made it back for chapter 9. As you have heard me mention before, chapter 9 on cash is the most important chapter in the entire book, as far as I'm concerned. So having said that, it's imperative that you guys put a little bit more time and effort into the homework and also into studying for our upcoming exam. So I'm going to share my screen because we have a lot to cover today. Well, you'll notice in a minute when we look at the agenda, pretty much the entire totality of today's class is going to be spent on the bank reconciliation process. And the bank reconciliation process, as we mentioned last time in class, is the process of bringing together two parties, just as a reconciliation would happen in a human relationship or in a family. You're bringing two parties together to resolve the differences. And so that's our focus for today. So about half an hour ago, I sent you out exercise, I think it was 9-5. We didn't quite get to it last time, but it is going to comprise probably about 10 points of your next test question. So we're going to start off looking at that. We will work on a real life bank reconciliation today where we actually have to discover the differences. And then we will take a look at some electronic transactions, and that'll get us ready for exam 3. So here we are with the agenda for day 2 near the bottom. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to do a more in-depth review of why a bank reconciliation is so important. We've already gone over what I call the skeleton or bare bones format. So we'll bring that up again. We'll spend a little bit more time adjusting the accounts after we do the bank rec. And then we'll talk about some online banking issues. Specifically, there's one 10-point test question that we'll be working on today that will pop up on the exam that you guys will be taking a week from today. So let me stop for a second. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so last time we were here, we talked about the importance of a bank reconciliation. Although the problems that we did, the author gave us the information that we needed to do the bank rec. Today, we'll do an easy one first, I believe. I'll have to check out the problems. But the most important thing, I think, as far as you personally are concerned, is we're going to do a real life bank reconciliation where we actually have to compare the records and discover what the differences are. So we'll do that. And then here's the process we'll follow since we're talking about the lecture portion first. You get your records, which may be a checkbook. It could be a company where you'd be looking at the general ledger. If it were my personal finances, I'd be looking at Quicken, or you may just have a notebook where you're writing your cash expenditures down. The most important thing that I think you can take out of this chapter is the importance of managing your cash. And if you're not writing it down, if you're not tracking the expenditures, I used this saying last time, you're letting your money manage you instead of the other way around. So I think that's the most important thing we need to take away from this. If we don't know where our cash is going, there's no possible way we can manage it. And I already explained to you that this was life-changing when I started doing it for myself. And when you are faced with, look, I'm spending $300 a month on coffee drinks, or I'm spending $200 a month going through fast food drive-throughs, then you can start to make some informed choices on, there's nothing wrong with that, but is that where I necessarily want my money to go? Do I enjoy Starbucks enough to want to spend a couple $100s there a month? The answer for me was a resounding no. There were other priorities that I would rather be spending that money on. So once you've started tracking your expenditures, you're going to take the bank statement and you're going to take your records and you're going to do a line item by line item comparison. We're actually going to do that today. If they match, you're going to check them off. If they don't match, you're going to put a big circle around it because those circles are the unresolved differences. And just like a human relationship, if we have unresolved differences, those are not healthy. Okay, they're not good from a financial standpoint either. So we'll talk about what do we do with those circles? Where would we put that on the bank rec? Okay, well, we went through this format last time. This is what I call the bare bones format. Your author will teach it vertically. I tend to teach it side by side because I just think it's easier to remember that way. We went through all these different terms in class last time, but in a nutshell, we learned that on the bank side, there's only 2 items that are going to appear there every single month, no matter whether you're a small, puny little firm, maybe my accounting firm, or you're a large international global retailer. Our bank recs are going to look the same. On the bank side, you're going to have deposits in transit. We defined those last time. And you're going to have outstanding checks. We defined those. The only other thing you'll ever see on the bank side is an error that your bank makes. On the book side, I usually, honestly, I don't have too many pluses on the book side. I usually, maybe once or twice a year, may have a collection that the bank makes on my behalf. And then again, there's always that penny or two of interest. And by the way, they since have allowed interest on corporate accounts. You can ignore that. I forgot to take that sentence out. And then you can subtract out, or you will be subtracting out, any kind of fees that the bank charged you that you don't have in your records. And then I have these every month in my company, NSF checks. Those are payments that your customer has made to you. You've went ahead and deposited them in your account. Now all of a sudden you get this, again, with Bank of America, this bright pink NSF slip that tells you we took this money out of your account, and then they probably charged you a fee. And then, of course, I mentioned in my account, there are errors. I would love to say I've had a month without errors, but I think I'd be lying to you. So my most frequent error is going through the ATM machine and forgetting to record it. Other types of errors that I make would be transposing numbers. So I have to be really careful that I don't transpose numbers. But at the end of this process, you'll know that you've done it correctly because you bring the 2 balances together. They have to balance. Once you've accomplished that bank rec, you're not completely done, because we said last time that anything on the book side, we need to make adjustments for, and we went through the examples of that. So today really is a rehash of what we talked about last time. We'll start off by doing some fairly easy exercises and an easy bank rec, and then we'll work our way toward actually finding the differences rather than just having the author give them to us. So let me stop. This is a good place to stop with a picture of the bank rec on our screen. You'll see me write this down today, probably 3 or 4 times, to get yourself in the habit of writing it down every time before you do your homework. So many of you are setting up a bad precedent going into 101. So many of you are going into Connect and just clicking these drop-down boxes without really thinking about what you're doing. You want to get into the habit of doing your homework from scratch on a piece of paper. You can look at Connect. You don't have to have a printer, but do your homework on a piece of paper, get the bank recs all balanced out on your own, and then go into Connect and enter your answers as if it were an accuracy checker. I know what's around the corner, and you guys, most of you don't. So please heed the advice. The effort level from 100 to 101 is way up here. This is not a transferable class. It prepares you for one that is, but 101 is a transferable class. The level of reading is going to go up. The level of difficulty is going to go up. The level of effort required on the homework is going to go up as well. Anybody have any questions before we jump in? And I asked you guys to try exercise 9-5. And I mentioned, I think in the announcement, that I'm expecting this to be probably worth about 10 points of multiple choice questions. So I hope that you completed this. We're going to go through the transactions because you will see them on the exam. But it says at Pleasanton Delivery and Courier Service, the following items were found to cause a difference between the bank side and the book side. Indicate whether each of these items will affect the bank balance or the book balance. And then, as we talked about last time, because I know what's on the test, I added in a little bit of difficulty to our exercise that we're working on in class. I also asked you whether it would be a plus or a minus on each side. So I had set up this problem a little bit differently, intentionally. And they give us, it looks like 7 items, and we're going to fill these blanks in. So these are going to be multiple choice questions. So let me give you an example of how this first one here, let me highlight it so you can see it, how this first one would be worded. Okay, so on multiple choice, this is what you would expect. It would say a deposit in transit is A, added to the bank side, B, deducted from the bank side, C, added to the book side, or D, deducted from the book side. So here's how I would tell you to approach it. There's only 2 things on the bank side. You saw it on the handout, just 2. There are deposits in transit, and there's outstanding checks, and that's it. The only other thing you're going to see on that bank side is a bank error. So by default, right, a deposit in transit is one of those 2 items, and those are added in. So if you're wondering, where am I getting this information from? It's that handout that we were just looking at, that bare bones chicken scratching handout that we talked about where these items would go. So the X in this case is going to go under the plus here. Let me make this bigger. Let me make the X's bigger so you can see it. Give me 1 second. Okay. And we'll go answer this JE required at the very end, because I'll give you a quick and easy way to do that. All right, second one, a debit memo for a dishonored check. Okay, remember, banks have their debits and credits backwards. There's a reason for that. The money that is sitting in our bank account, I'll use Bank of America because that's where most of mine is sitting. That's a liability to the bank. Why? Because if I went into the bank today and wanted to withdraw all my money, they'd have to give it to me. That's why their debits and credits are backwards. So this is what we call an NSF check, and that would be on the book side, and they would take it out of my account. Okay, number 3, a credit memo for a promissory note. Okay, there is a vocabulary word in this chapter. A promissory note is a written promise to pay a specific amount at a specific point in time. So, for example, if I was going to sell a large quantity of volleyball uniforms, let's say to a volleyball club, I could either give them an account payable or I could have them sign a promissory note. And anybody that can't pay me in 30 days, I will create a note and have them sign an IOU. So all of a sudden that may be collected by the bank, and that would show up as a plus on my side. Why? Oftentimes the money just comes into your account. You don't know about it necessarily until you get a little notice from the bank. The errors are the hardest. So I'm going to highlight this one. The errors will be the most heavily missed sections on this next test. So I'm going to go read up here. I have to make this a little bit bigger for my eyes. We'll have to decide whose fault it is, okay, whether it's the bank's fault or the book's fault. And then the harder part is determining whether to add it or take it out. So let me read this, number 4. It says an error found in Pleasanton's records. Okay, stop. We know it's a book error now because it was in our records. So we're on the book side. We just narrowed our choices to 50-50. So an error found on our side involves the amount of a check. The firm's checkbook and general journal indicate 808 as the amount, but the canceled check, there's another vocabulary word that I'm going to come back to in a minute. The canceled check and the listing on the bank statement shows that 880 was the actual sum. Okay, so we messed up. It's clearly a book error. It's our records that contain the error. And what a canceled check is if I were to go on my Bank of America account and I click on the check, it shows me the actual image of the check that was cashed. That's a canceled check. So it would show you the front and back of the check. And when we looked at that, we found out that we actually wrote the check for 880. We only recorded 808. By the way, that's an example of a transposition error that I make all the time, where you switch or transpose two digits. So what happened there is we didn't take out enough money. We only took 808 out on our side. So that would be an error on our side. And to fix it, in this case, we would need to take more money out. And those are the tough items. So if you're missing those, go into the Learn Smart and do as many questions as you can find. Go to the old publisher's website and do as many questions as you can find. I think I even gave you guys an old exam in the modules link. We'll go check that out toward the end of class, but I think I did. So I would go, if you have time, I would go try those old tests as well. Questions on the first four, anybody? Okay, then 5, an outstanding check is one of those few things that was on the bank side. They're subtracted out. We talked about those last time. The example I used was with my mom taking checks that I'd given her and stuffing them in a sock drawer. Okay, that's an outstanding check. I know about it and I'm carrying it through on my books that's already been taken out, but the bank doesn't know about it because she keeps stuffing the checks in her drawer. So we have to take it out on the bank side. And then a bank service charge would be something that we need to take out on our side. And then number 7 has happened to me twice in my lifetime. A check issued by somebody else that was charged to your account by mistake. Okay, if you've ever had this happen, it's very maddening. All of a sudden you see money coming out of your account and you wonder, what the heck? I never wrote a check for that amount, or I never made a payment for that amount. It used to happen more often before the advent of all the magnetic, screening devices that they have, but that would be a bank error. And because they accidentally took money out of your bank account, the bank would have to fix it by adding it back. So that X would go here. Okay, which of these items would require a bank or a journal entry? Anything on the book side. So I'm going to highlight this. Anything on the book side in the orange area there would require a journal entry. So an NSF check would require a journal entry. Again, let me make that bigger so you can see it. A credit memo for the promissory note, because it's on the book side, would require an entry. So would an error that we make on our books, and so would that bank service fee. Okay, why would that require an adjustment? Because our cash account was before that bank reconciliation. And if you do these correctly, once you're done, you can double check that you've done the journal entries correctly, at least the cash part of it, by making sure that your adjusted cash in the T account now or in the general ledger account matches what you get on the bank rec. So you'll notice that we spent quite a bit of time on this exercise. I think it's time well spent because, again, you can probably expect at least 10 points in terms of multiple choice questions related to the cash account. So is there anything you see up there on those 7 items where you're unsure? Because I can almost guarantee you're going to see that on the test. Okay, let's go do a quick, what I call easy bank rec, because they give us the reconciling differences. And then we'll go do a harder bank rec where we actually have to come up with the adjusting items. So I did give you a 10-point test question related to a bank rec and journal entries. So it might look similar to this. Any bank rec that you take is fair game, except I will tell you that the harder one we're going to look at on the next problem, in the interest of time critical requirements, I did not give you a tough bank rec. I didn't give you the next one here that we're going to do 9-3B. I gave you one that's similar to 9-6 or the last problem on here. And that last problem on here, we may not get to today, but I will, of course, send you out that answer. So first thing I would do if I were taking the test, the very first thing I would do before I even read the problem, I would chicken scratch out what any bank rec is going to look like. Remember the goal to bring together the two parties and resolve any differences. So before I even read it, I'm going to chicken scratch this out. I'm going to put balance per bank over here, and it's at March 31st. So it's always important to know what day you're reconciling this as of. And then on the bank side, I am highly likely to have two things, either a deposit in transit or outstanding checks, many times both. So I'm going to add in the deposit in transit. I'm going to deduct out any outstanding checks. And if for some reason I have, whoops there, in case I have any bank errors, those would also go on the bank side. I put them at the bottom, again, because I think it's easier to remember them kind of as a side note. Your author is just going to let you put them either in the add area or in the deduct area. So anything related to a bank error is going to have to be adjusted. And that'll give me my bank side, adjusted bank balance. And then on the book side, I'm going to start off with the balance per the books. This could be a general ledger. It could be Quicken, it could be QuickBooks, whatever you are using to keep track of your cash. On the book side, you've heard me say this before, I don't hardly ever have ads, but it's possible there may be a collection. There may be that penny or two of interest. More likely though, I'm going to see some subtractions. I'm going to see the bank taking things out of my accounts. Common are bank fees and NSF checks. And then if it's my account, I know for a fact I will most likely have a book error. So I'll have to figure out which way that will go. And that will give me the adjusted book balance. So I don't know, that took me maybe 3 to 5 minutes to write down. This is what I hope you'll be putting into memory, not just for a test, but this is something that you guys actually need to start doing on your own books. You can't do it though until you start tracking your cash. If you don't track your cash, you'll have no idea what this number up here is. So now once I have that written down, once I have that in my head, I'm ready to go pop the numbers in where they go. The reason I call this an easy bank rec is because the author has disclosed all of the reconciling items to us. All we need to worry about is the placement. In real life, I don't have somebody coming into my cash account and saying, oh, here's a reconciling item. I need to find those. And that's what we're going to do on the next one after this. Okay, so this is an office supply place. They have a bank statement. Let me go down here and pop that in, showing as 73,047. Whoops, I got an extra number in there. 73047. Let me go get rid of that digit. That looks better. And the firm's records, this is the book side, showed a balance of 72,987. If those matched, I'd be done. Okay, but they don't match. So now I got to keep going. I am going to make a column where I put letter numbers, or the numbers in this case, that will match up with where we got them from. So I'm just going to go line item by line item through here. It says the difference between the two balances was caused by the following items. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. Prepare a bank rec and do the journal entries. Okay, so this is pretty similar to what you'll be asked to do. All right, number 1 says a debit memo. So as soon as I see that debit memo, they are the opposite of what our debits to cash are. They're taking money out of my account, which covers the bank collection fee for number 6. So that is a fee. I'm going to go down here to fee, and I'm going to put in $40, and I'm going to put what that was for. That was a collection fee. And I'll come over here and I'm going to show my subtractions as minuses. And then I will go in the column next to it and put a reference number of where that came from. Don't think you guys need to worry about zeros on those. I'm going to keep on going unless I hear questions. There is the deposit of transit of 3,700. Okay, that goes on the plus side. Too bad they didn't give you a date because it's almost always near the end of the month. So if that was a date earlier in the month, I'd be a little bit alarmed, but we'll assume that it's toward the end of the month. They didn't tell us otherwise. Questions on the first two items, anybody? Okay, we'll keep going. 3, a check for $348 issued by another firm that was mistakenly charged to our account. There's an example of a bank screw up. That was a bank problem. They accidentally charged this company for $348. Okay, that is an example of a bank error. To fix it, they need to put $348 back into our account. And remember, you guys wouldn't like it if somebody was touching your cash account without you knowing about it. We want to leave very good descriptions because companies also get very upset when cash is touched without their knowledge. So I'm going to put in what that was. It was a check issued by another firm. Bank will have to fix that. So that gives us the first 3 items. Number 4 says a debit memo. Okay, stop. Debit and credits are different. For banks, that means before I even read any further, they're taking money out of our account. Okay, for what? For an NSF check, which was issued to us from our customer. So that's a check that we received. We put it in our account from a customer, and now we find out that it bounced. Okay, that would be killer. That's a killer check. Because what probably happens, I don't know about you guys, but when I get money in from my job, I start paying out my bills. So all of a sudden, if a customer bounces us a large check like that, that means that the checks that we've written or the payments we made are subject to bouncing. That's why that's a little bit scary. So that's 4643. I already have a section for NSF checks. I'm going to put who that was from, customer Wilson. And I will put the amount that they are going to take out of my account, which I think it was 4643. And let me put a reference item. That was number 4. Our goal again, to bring the 2 parties together and to resolve any differences. That's our goal. So I'll keep going. Number 5 talks about outstanding checks. Those are checks that you have written, but for some reason, they haven't cashed yet. This is where you would have seen a slew to my mom in my own personal account, usually for reimbursement type things. And I'd have to carry them forward forever until she got around to cashing them, usually when they used to go to Vegas. So they are a pain. That's why I don't write them anymore to her. And these are subtracted out. So let me show these as a subtraction. It would be nice if they gave you dates, okay, but they didn't. That was number 5. And then finally, this is what doesn't happen too many times. All of a sudden, you get a notice that money has been placed in your account for a collection of a note. So I'm going to add that in. In this case, it was non-interest bearing, so I don't have to worry about the interest in the journal entry process. And it doesn't really say who that's from. So we'll just put non-interest note. And that's it, other than making sure that the 2 sides foot, that they balance out to each other, because if they don't, you're not done yet. You've missed something. So I get 75,704 on the left. I just saw a little typo that I made. Let me fix that. And when I come over to the other side and sum that up, hopefully we get the same thing. We did. These two should match, so I'll make it red. In fact, I think I'll just copy the format over to the other one. We're almost done. There's one more thing we need to do. So before we do the journal entries, any questions where any of those items came from, or any questions on why is something a plus instead of a minus or vice versa? All right, well, here's the last problem. This is how much is sitting in our cash account right now. And this is how much should be sitting in our cash account right now. So what we need to do are journal entries for anything on the book side. I need journal entries. In this case, I have 3 of them. Remember that what we're doing is we're touching the cash account. So you know cash is going to be one of the accounts debited or credited. It's up to us to discern what the other check or what the other debit or credit's going to be. So this would be dated, these journal entries would be dated the same day as the bankrupt. And it looks like I have 3 entries to make. I'm just going to do them in the order I see them. There is no proper order. So cash went up on that collection by $7,400. And the note receivable went down by $7,400. That is a vocabulary word. I would make sure that you know what a note receivable is if you don't already. And again, put in a 3rd line description, because remember what we're doing. The journal is keeping an economic financial diary of what happened to this company. So we would put something like collection of a non-interest bearing note via Bankrupt. Now, I know you guys don't have to put descriptions on Connect, but again, I don't think you're always going to be working in a Connect environment, so it's good to create those habits now. Okay, so I'm going to check this one off. I got that one. Next one on 331 is a bank fee here. So we see that cash went down. We know we're going to credit cash. What I would do is debit something like bank fee expense, but we already talked about the fact that I think, unfortunately, your author is going to use miscellaneous, which is my clients are not allowed to use miscellaneous. That's not even something I would entertain ever doing, because it's not deductible and it doesn't do a good job of tracking the history of what the money's being spent on. So I'll widen that so it shows up. And again, this is the company's money. Keep a really good record of what that is being spent on. This was a collection fee for the note. So there's my description on that one. And then that last one was an NSF check. If somebody bounces a check to you, that means they owe you the money. So I'm going to put accounts receivable. I think it was Wilson Construction Company. And of course, the cash went down. I'm not going to mess with changing the width of my columns. I'll just move it over in the interest of time. And again, this is the company's cash account that you're touching. NSF check from customer Wilson. These journal entries that you're creating should stand on their own. You need to leave a good audit trail, especially for a large number. This would be a large number for my company. That would catch an auditor's attention, right? And then there might be some follow-up. Of course, if somebody bounces you a check, I don't know too many people that would just say, forget it and leave it at that. You would follow up and want that customer to not only pay you the amount of the check he or she bounced, but if there is a fee related to that, you would also want to grab that money as well. Questions on that? Okay, here comes our real live bank reconciliation. Okay, and I'm really glad that we were able to work this into our time today. I reconcile my cash at least monthly. I probably do it weekly now because of identity theft issues, definitely on my mom's account. So this is something that is more typical with what you guys would encounter if you started to reconcile your records. You would take whatever records you have, and in here, it almost just looks like a notepad, really. So let me first differentiate. Oh, I already did. Here's the bank records on the left, and I tried to cram this all in on one Excel spreadsheet so we could work through it. And here's our records on the right. So we're going to read through this problem. Again, the big picture, our goal is to bring the two parties together and resolve any unreconciled differences. So if you go back to the handout, the first thing you do is make sure that there were no items from the previous month that were still outstanding. Well, if you look at the bank statement balance of $6,500, you can see that it balances to the starting balance. That means there were no items left over from the previous month because these beginning balances match. So step number one, let me show you the handout that I'm referring to. I think it's right here. Nope, that's a test review sheet. Step number one, as we go through this real life bank reconciliation, we got to do the legwork first. So here's what we're doing. Make sure that any reconciling items due to timing differences from the previous month have cleared. Okay, I know that this company didn't have any because the starting balances were exactly the same. So that step's done. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Kind of.
Go ahead.
Well, not about that, but which Excel file are you using for the 9-3B? I'm not seeing it on 1 or 2.
2. 9-3B, yes. There's 2 tabs for 9-3B, I believe. One might have the data and one might have, let's see, Maggie, let me go back and look.
For the one that you were just looking at.
Yeah, the one I was just looking at, let me pull it up. Day 2, I think it was this one. There's 2 tabs. No, there's only 1 tab. 9-3, it says real life bank reconciliation.
Yeah, because I don't know, like I see the 9-6, but it doesn't say B.
You should see it right next to 9-6. You don't see it?
Like I see all the tabs at the bottom, and I have both of them like downloaded, and I'm not seeing either or.
Can somebody else in the class help me out? Do you guys see that problem?
Oh wait, oh okay, I think I found it.
Oh, you found it? Okay.
3.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I found it. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Never a problem to have a question. Okay, so let me go back to that handout we were just looking at here. So we've done the reconciling items. Now we're going to go look at the deposits. So let me just preview what's coming. We're going to go look at the deposits. I don't know if your personal accounts, anything like mine, but I might see 1 or 2, right, from jobs that I work. I might see 1 or 2 paychecks. And then we'll go take a look at all of the checks that we've paid. For me, it doesn't have to be physical checks. It could be electronic payments. That's where it's going to be time consuming because I'm paying the utilities and a babysitter and, you know, the lawn guy and just all these other, that usually takes a little bit longer. And then you want to look at anything that hasn't yet been checked off. Remember what we're doing. We're resolving the differences. So our focus is going to be line item by line item comparison, and any difference that we find, we're going to make a circle around it. All right, so I tried to do this the best way I knew how by throwing this on an Excel spreadsheet, and we will work here. So step number 1, make sure that there were no balances from last month that carried over as far as reconciling items. We know there's not because the starting balances are equal. Step number 2 on that handout, check out the deposits. Okay, for example, here's the bank statement and there's a $500 deposit. Do you see that on your records? And I do. So I'm going to check them off. 500, 500. The next deposit I see is 410. Okay, do you see a matching one on our records? There it is. Check it off. And this last one, $730, it is there also. So we've checked off those deposits. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I see one more deposit on my books that isn't on the bank statement. That is a deposit in transit. It's near the end of the month. What probably happened is I went through on a Friday night and made a deposit for $900, but it didn't show up on the bank rec. It'll probably be showing up on the next month. That is a reconciling item. If they match, we check them off. If they don't match, they're unreconciled items. We're going to circle them and then we'll throw it into our template down below when we're done. So we've taken care of the beginning balances. We've taken care of the 3 and 4 deposits over here. Now we're going to go to the one that's probably a little bit more time consuming, all the payments, what the bank calls debits, payments going out to others. So we're doing a line item by line item comparison. So there's the $100. I see that's cleared the bank. Check them off. Here's the $10. That's cleared the bank. Check it off. Here's $200. Check number 107. Looks like it cleared. Check it off. $225. Looks like it cleared. Check it off. $60. Check 109. Looks like it's cleared. I'm going to keep on going here. $16. Check number 110. I do see that. $80 has cleared. Check it off. And now these last 2 items, you notice they're not checks. They're 2 transactions. I don't see this one over on my side, nor do I see this service charge. So I'm circling them because they don't match. This first one is an NSF check. So that's a customer who gave us a check. We put it into our bank account and now all of a sudden it's bounced. And this service charge is an amount that we didn't know about that the bank's taking out of our account. Those are reconciling items, so they're circles right now. Let's go over to our side of the house. Do you see anything else over here on the right-hand side that doesn't match up? Well, I see a couple things. I see this check. 108 for $75. Okay, that means we wrote it, but if you look over here, there was no check 108 that has cleared, might be in a sock drawer. That is an outstanding check. And then I also notice one for $112 that I wrote. It's on my books, but it hasn't yet cleared the bank. That's also an outstanding check. So you guys check me. I think I have 5 circles. I think I have 5 reconciling items. My goal is to bring the 2 balances together. Let me stop and see if you have any questions, and we'll go chicken scratch out this bank rec and start popping or populating, popping, same thing, populating this bank rec template with those 5 circles. Our goal is to get the balances to balance out at the end. Questions on anything you saw done up at the top here? Okay, I'm going to chicken scratch this out. We've already done the legwork. Let's go chicken scratch out what this Bankrupt's going to look like. We're going to add deposit in transit. I think I remember one of those. And we're going to take out the outstanding checks. And I think we had a couple of those. So leave yourself a little bit of room. And I don't think we had any bank errors, but I want you to get into the habit of knowing where they would go if we had them. So I'm going to go ahead and put a line item here. And that's going to give us our adjusted balance per the bank. Over on the book side, I don't recall any collections, but if we had them, it would go here. Any type of small couple pennies in interest would go there. Most of the time, for my account anyways, it's the deductions that I have to be careful about. They could be for fees, they could be for NSF checks, and always on my account, there would be an error. And that's going to give us our adjusted balance per the books. Our goal is to have these two meet. The date of our bankrupt is September 30th. So I want to go pull the two balances from the documents above. So I'm looking for on the bank statement, I think it was a Texas bank statement. I'm sensitive because my husband has family in Texas, so I notice that all the time. Our starting balance as of the end of the month is right here. 73.23.50. 73.23.50 is my starting balance on the bank statement. And on the books, I think I may have accidentally cut off. Hopefully not. Here it is. They gave it to us here. The book balance on our cash account was 81.34. They should have really shown us that, but they gave it to us up top. So 81.34. Again, if those two matched, I'd be done. But I can tell you I'm 57 years old. I don't think, except for maybe when I was 16 and didn't have much in the way of money coming in, these have never balanced. I've always had to balance out my cash account. So all we have left to do is pop these 5 circles in. There is no special order to do it. So I do need to know who that check is to. They probably told us someplace. Let me go back up to the top here. Yes, here's an NSF check by Cole, a credit customer. So I'll go put that first amount in, that NSF check, $118. Let's go pop that in where it goes. So NSF check, and I'm going to put mine up here so I don't have to keep driving you crazy by going up and down. It drives me crazy. That is from Annette Cole. And that was for $118. The bank takes it right out of our account, usually along with the fee. So you can go check that one off. We've taken care of that. So I'm going to go ahead and just check that off. It's not unreconciled anymore. And I'll go take a look at that service fee for $7.50. That's going to be taken out also. So that goes on the book side. It's a service charge. It's not a really good description, but it's all we have. So I can go check that one off. These other 3 on our side are things that we've already recorded, right? You see them here. We've recorded them, but the bank doesn't know about them. These are the timing differences. So I have 1 deposit in transit, which happened near the end of the month. And I have 2 checks, 108 and 112, that are outstanding, meaning we wrote them, they're on our books, but the bank doesn't know about them yet because they're sitting around somebody's desk or somebody's sock drawer, depending on who's holding it. So put as much detail as you're given. On this deposit in transit, it would be important to include the date because these should happen near the end of the month. So that would increase the cash on the bank side by $900. And then as much data as you have on those outstanding checks at a minimum, you should include the amounts, or not the amounts. You definitely have to include the amounts, but any numbers, possibly dates if you have them. I'm going to show them coming out as deductions so I don't screw up the math. And I will probably subtotal them here. You don't have to. I just think that helps visually. There were not any bank errors, so I think I'm just going to do an equal sum if my computer allows me to.
Professor Johnson?
Yes, sir. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A student asked if the service fee is for the NSF or is it for the monthly bank account fees?
It's a great question. I don't think they told us. So if any of you guys see a description up there on what that was for, did they tell us at the top? I don't think they told us. And that's a good question, because if it was for that NSF check, you could expect to get that from the customer, but they didn't mention anything about it. So I'm going to assume that it is just a transaction fee, a monthly transaction fee. But they should have given us more information. It's a great question. Okay, let's sum these up and let's see if we balance. You guys will have a really good feeling on the test on whether you've done this correctly, because your balances need to balance out. If they don't, you probably made a mistake. And here they do. So let me put some lines around this to show you what proper formatting would look like. Single and double lines to show the user that we're done. However, what we still need to do is journalize just the book side. And I'm warning you that on the test, don't be surprised if they throw you a curveball. For example, here's what a question. I remember this question. I can't say if it's on the test that I just created. I remember this question popping up. It might have been my 101 class where we also talk about a bank rep. It said something like, the journal entry for an outstanding check would include, and then A would say debit to cash, B would say credit to cash, C would say we can't tell, and D might say none of the above. Okay, the answer to that, anything on the bank side is the bank's problem. There is no journal entry for an outstanding check because it shows up on the bank side. And in time, those things will clear on their own. So we only journalize for things that show up on the book side. So on this one, for the service fee, there would be some kind of an expense. My guess is they're probably going to use miscellaneous. I'm going to use bank fee expense. I just can't bring myself to write down miscellaneous. And a credit to cash. And the student that asked that question, it was an excellent question. We don't know what the fee is for. I'm assuming based on the amount that it's a service fee charge, but we just don't know. I will put the 930 bank rec. And that second one, we definitely know that our customer owes us some money because they gave us a check that was no good. And the bank could very well charge us a fee. They range from $35 to $40. And I did think I told you there is a class action lawsuit out there against the major banks saying that the fees are excessive. So we'll see what happens with that. And this would be an NSF check from customer Annette Cole via 930 bank rec. That is an example of a more real life bank rec where you have to go in and you have to do the legwork and come up with these reconciling items. I don't have anybody coming in to my books and saying, oh, here's the reconciling items. We have to hunt for them. And I will tell you, there's lots of companies out there that will bring a CPA. I know because I do a couple of these right now, and they'll pay me $350 an hour to come out there and do their bank rec. Okay, why? Not because the people in their firm are incapable of doing it. I mean, this is an accounting 100 class and we're doing it. So it's not that they are incapable. It's that I'm independent. I'm not inside the company. My hands don't touch their cash and my hands don't touch their merchandise. So I come in as an outsider who's independent and do this internal control feature where if I find things funny with the cash, I'm going to be talking directly to the owners or the board of directors, whatever the case may be. And so there are many people that will have this done with an external accountant. Questions on that? Okay, so you will have a 10-point test question that is a bank rec. It'll be similar to any of the bank recs that you've seen. It will not be like this one where we had to hunt and peck for the differences in the interest of time, but there is a 10-point test question. The second 10-point test question out of this chapter is this exercise. It's the exact same exercise with the numbers changed around. So someplace in your notes, write yourself a note. This is a 10-point test question. It's going to deal with electronic transactions. And this was a problem that was put in based on a lot of feedback from myself and other instructors that teach this, which said to the author, why are you guys teaching bank recs with all these checks? I don't know about you guys now, but I only write checks to pretty much, when I think about it, a couple of charitable organizations. My bills and everything else are paid electronically. So this problem came up in an effort to kind of bridge the gap between old school and new school. So we're going to take a look at this. We'll read it together and then we'll work through it. And then we'll take a look at our test review sheet. It says after retiring, Freudian slip there. After returning from a 3-day business trip, the accountant for Southeast Sales, Joanna Estrada, checked bank activity in the company's checking account online, and she sees all this activity that has happened. After matching these transactions to the company's cash account, she noted the following unrecorded transactions. So here's the deal. She's coming home from this trip and she's taking a look, as I look all the time on my bank statement, and seeing a bunch of activity. She's saying, oh, I know about this one. I know about this one. But here are some unrecorded transactions. This hasn't been recorded yet. So we're not at the bank reconciliation stage yet. We're trying to clean up our books prior to the end of the month. Okay, and so she notices 4 things specifically. We're going to go talk about those 4 things. So number 1, the ATM withdrawal on 9/22. Okay, go find it. The ATM withdrawal on 9/22. That would be this amount. I'm going to put a little 1. $240 was the owner's personal use. Okay, in other words, the owner went through the ATM machine, which happens all the time, and took out $240. The accountant didn't know about it. What would be the journal entry to record that transaction? Okay, well, she would give it a date of 9/22. What account do you use when the owner takes out money for personal use? You use the drawing account. So that would be a drawing and a credit to cash. I'm going to put a column in here so I can go put the number 1. Let me put a little red number 1. And that would be for the $240, I think it was. Yes, I put a line through it so I couldn't see it. 240. This is something that drives me crazy, but it happens all the time in my own company. ATM withdrawal by owner for personal use. Okay, that is exactly why we have the drawing account. So she's going through a cleanup process prior to bank reconciliation time, maybe before the accountants come in, and she's trying to get her cash account up to date. Number 2, the ACH credit on 9/22. Okay, go find it. The ACH credit on 9/22. Here it is. And this says it was an electronic funds payment received from a customer located outside the United States. Okay, so what's happening on that account? We know our cash is going up because it's in the plus column. And what did that come from? Why did that arise? Well, it mentioned that it was from a credit customer. So we would credit our accounts receivable from, and we'd list the customer's name, Edwards UK. So again, not an error, it's an unrecorded transaction right now. Our job is cleaning up the books, and I'm trying to get that amount, $8,900.
Professor Johnson,
Yes.
so if the books are done incorrectly, would she still be responsible for paying the difference, or how would that work?
Would she still be responsible for paying the difference? This is probably a payment of some sort that that someone owed you. So yeah, if we didn't report it correctly, for example, if I put 9,800 instead of 8,900, that's an error. So these aren't necessarily errors, they're unrecorded transactions. Giselle, so I'm not sure if I answered your question. It might be because I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, if you want to rephrase it.
So the question asked was, if she does their books wrong, is she responsible for paying the difference that's wrong, or is she not responsible?
She is not responsible unless it's fraud, and then she could be held to criminal penalties. Otherwise, it's a business risk of doing business. The owner could probably sue her in small claims court if she did something intentionally. But no, as a matter of, I guess you would say, record, your employees are responsible to use due care. If they mess up unintentionally, you try and fix it the best you can, but they're not gonna be responsible for taking money out of their own pocket for a business mistake. Hope that answers it. All right, number 3, the bill payment made on 9/23. Go find it. The bill payment made on 9/23, it looks like right here, was for a trash payment that was made electronically. Okay, so that's cash going out. So we know we're going to credit cash. What would we debit? I'm thinking like trash expense, except in parentheses here, they are recording that under utilities. Okay, so we'll go record that. Utilities expense and cash. And by the way, we should put the correct dates down. I've been neglecting to do that. This one was 9/23. And I think the one previous to that was probably 9/22. So let me finish this one. 3605. Remember, you're keeping an electronic diary of the journal is an electronic diary of what happened. It keeps a good financial history. So this would be something like unrecorded payment to, and I think they gave us a name, waste control trash services. Darn, I think I left my email open. Let me go close it so you guys don't have to listen to those beeps. And the last one, number 4, let's go find that. The loan payment on 9/24. Okay, let's go find it. The loan payment on 9/24. This looks like it here. The loan payment on 9/24 was to Central Motors for the company's monthly payment on a loan for the automobiles. The loan does not bear interest. Wow, I wish I had a company that I could borrow money from. That does not charge interest. Well, that is a note payable. Whoops. So there's two sides to a note. When you guys read about promissory notes, there are notes that are due to me from goods that I've sold, and there's notes that I owe to other people. A car note would be an example of that. So we would debit note payable and credit cash. You could probably use loan payable too, and that would be sufficient, but they specifically, I believe, use note payable for $3,500. And I'll put unrecorded payment for car note. And I'll write a note, non-interest bearing. Okay, so our electronic transactions are very important. You will see a test question. I think I wrote 10 points. We'll go make sure. I don't ever intentionally lie to students. It's possible it's for a different point value, but I do remember 10. We'll go look at the review sheet here in just a minute, and we'll adjust that if I see that it's anything different. 9.5b has to do with some errors. I'll probably I want you guys to try 9.6b because I have a feeling that that is the test question. It'll be very similar. It will have some different numbers. So if you can do a problem like 9-6b on your own without the notes sitting in front of you, and you can get that bank balance and that book balance to match up, that would be a really good way to tell yourself whether you're ready for the test as far as chapter 9 goes. Okay, so I will also post that entry later today as soon as I see that Sandra or Giselle has posted their file. So we're going to go look at the test review sheet. Do you guys have any questions on anything we've learned about in chapter 9? Okay, let's go take a look at the review sheet. Let me show you where it is. I think I may have already have it open, but it's in the modules link. It is, let me wait for the computer to catch up. After chapter 9, so this is where I'm looking at. I did also give you some practice problems, and this was based on a real test, just to give you extra practice. I also gave you the solutions. But right now we're looking at the format of the exam, and I'm pretty sure I opened that. Yes. So the reason we're going over this now is because I want you to have that extra day to study. I'll let you know whether there'll be tutors in their offices. I'll let you know that later when I find out. That's totally my mistake on not reaching out to them. So lots of new accounts. Okay, we have now been focused on merchandising transactions. So we learned, I didn't count them, probably 4 or 5 new accounts on the buying side, probably another 4 or 5 new accounts on the selling side. And then we had a whole lot of new terminology on the cash side. So for all those accounts, you should know the type, the normal balance, and which financial statement they show up on. Okay, the other generic bullet points are you should know sales transactions. There's 4 different types. We went through all 4 in class. We went through cash sales, on-account sales, bank credit cards, and non-bank credit cards. We went through how sales tax works. We went through returns, discounts, both prompt payment discounts and trade discounts. And throughout these past 3 chapters, there's lots of documents. So I would go look over the terms and definitions at the end of each chapter. Then we did a chapter on the buying side. So again, there's lots in there. There's documents. For example, do you know what a purchase order is? Do you know what a purchase requisition is? That's what I mean by lots of terms and definitions. So we looked at the buying side of the house. We looked at journalizing, we looked at returns, discounts. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the freight terms. We just glanced at the documents, but I did tell you that you should be familiar with those documents. And then this chapter, the most important chapter, which you will see weighted. Okay, right? I asked you more about the banking transactions than I do about everything else. The importance of cash, internal controls, which the handout and book describes in details. Documents, processes, the focus is going to be on the bank reconciliation, what it is, how it's done, journal entries, how do we deal with errors, how do you update the cash. Here's what I mean about endorsements. I haven't mentioned endorsements, but they're fully covered in the exam. What the heck's an endorsement? When you flip a check over, if I get a check in the mail today and I turn it over, if I just sign my name, that's an example of a blank endorsement. It's a dangerous type of endorsement, but it's what most of us do. Writing checks. Do you know the parties to a check? We didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. Our time was spent on the accounting. You guys have a lot of study to do as far as terms and definitions. And then, of course, both the sales and the buying side, we learned about the controlling account subsidiary relationship. I gave you guys lots of practice with extra spreadsheets on that. And here's what your test is going to look like. 50 points worth of multiple choice and short fill-ins. And the other 50 points are small problems, right? So one is a sale on account. Another couple are credit card sales, both bank, non-bank. So there's 10 points on the selling side of the house. There's 10 points on the buying side of the house. Those will be journal entries. And then right here, there's 30 points on the different cash things that we've been talking about for the past 2 days. One is a fairly easy cash short or over. We did that last time. Another one is identical to the question we just did on electronic banking transactions. And probably the toughest one on here is going to be that bank reconciliation with the journal entries. So 2.5 hours, same time as usual. If you guys were in my traditional class and you were walking in to take an exam, you'd be looking at a blank piece of paper and you'd be writing these things out from scratch. So now that we're in this forced online environment, we have to use Connect, and there's going to be drop-down boxes. But as you prepare, I would encourage you to just pretend that there is no drop-down boxes. That's the only way that you guys are going to be able to absorb this material and take it into Accounting 101 and 102, which is required of all business majors. That's the test review. Not any tricks. My goal on the test is to assess whether you learned the material of the chapters in question.